It is such a pleasure and a privilege to be here at the first Nalanda Literature Festival. Thanks to Mr. Ganga Kumar and his colleagues. It's a wonderful effort that has been initiated, and I'm sure over the years it'll grow and grow. And it's such a privilege also to be speaking to Pavan Varma. You all know him, you all know about him, and I'm really happy to say that I can also say that I have known him for a very long time, and he's a friend. And he is an author of distinction because he has delved in such a wide range of subjects that it really boggles the mind. I mean, all the way from his first book on Mirza Ghalib to the book on Adi Shankaracharya and the great Hindu civilization, books on the middle class. He sort of was a defining author as far as the Indian middle class is concerned. Being Indian, becoming Indian, so many books, and also his translations, his very, very distinguished translations of Mirza Ghalib and of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, of Gulzar Saab, especially because Gulzar Saab is a great friend. This book is a little bit different from some of his earlier books because it is more a compendium than something that he has authored himself. And therefore, he brings his brilliant mind and his study to making a kind of collection which can act as a reference book for people to dip into about Indian thought. The title itself is illuminating because it says Echoes of Eternity, which is a very, very wide and tall issue to address. A journey through Indian thought from the Rig Veda to the present. Pavan, first of all, the idea of bringing such a compendium, why and what, and then we will get into the various intricacies of the selection you have made, which you have addressed, of course, in your introduction as well, and various other aspects such as, which translations to use, and also what are the omissions that you regret most, because you have to have omissions in such a large undertaking. So we'll quickly try and traverse this kind of terrain. So first of all, the impetus behind bringing this compilation forward.
Thank you so much, Sunit. It's a great pleasure to be in Nalanda. Nalanda for us, that I see young faces here, should be an eternal reminder of the cerebral and intellectual greatness of India's heritage. It was the world's largest university, the Harvard of the past. And the fact that this happened here on this soil almost makes it sacred. And therefore the idea of a literature festival here has special significance for me. There's hardly any literature festival I have not been to. But for me, this is particularly special, and I want to thank Ganga Kumarji and his team for making it possible and wish it all the best to grow in the years to come. Secondly, of course, being in conversation with Sunit is for me a privilege in itself, because I've known Sunit, and what the introduction doesn't mention, apart from the fact that he read the news, is that he's an intellectual himself and a great theatre personality. I have a book called Yudhishthir and Draupadi. It's a book in 14-line sonnets, a poem, long poem, rhymed sonnets, which Gulzar Saab fell in love with, then translated into Hindi, Hindustani. Then Penguin republished it with my original and his translation. And Sunit and Shobna Narayan have done such a brilliant dance theatre adaptation of the book, which has been shown across India and also abroad. So this is something you should know about Sunit. And I want to add that Gulzar Saab not only translated the book, he then wrote a play on the book called Pasa, which has also been performed very widely. So, talking to Sunit is something a great joy for me. Now to your question, because I know we have shortage of time. You see, over the years, I've written something like 26 books. And my latest book is coming out next month at the Jaipur Literature Festival. It's my second novel, and it's called The Lady Who Carried the Monk Across the River. So Penguin has published it. It will come out next month. But through all my books, one of my a quest that has remained with me is to rediscover aspects of our great intellectual heritage, जिसको कहते हैं मौलिक सोच, the power of original thought. And I find one of the great tragedies of India today and of many post-colonial societies is that they have become adrift from their cultural roots. वो जो जड़ होती है ना, उससे वो अब थोड़ा सा अलग हो गए हैं in the sense कि they don't have enough knowledge about it. जब मैंने आदि शंकराचार्य पर किताब लिखी, when I wrote my book on Adi Shankaracharya, many people, well educated, living in Delhi, did not know when Adi Shankaracharya was born, what he wrote, what was his contribution. And I have called it Hinduism's greatest thinker. People have read Shakespeare but have never read Kalidas. People don't know that the first recorded text in India dates back 7,500 years, which makes it perhaps one of the oldest civilizations in the world. And these were written, I'm talking of the Rig Veda, which is now dated to somewhere around, by latest scientific studies, 3,500 to 4,000 BCE, before the birth of Christ and before the common era. तो एक 7,500 साल पुरानी बौद्धिक जो एक ये विरासत है, इससे हम खुद ही वंचित हो गए. और एक किसी भी देश के जिसके पास इस तरह की विरासत हो, उसके लिए ये त्रासदी है. If you don't know, you are a photocopy. If you don't know, you are a mimic. Nobody in the world, I've been a diplomat, I've served India's interests abroad, across the globe, nobody respects photocopies. People respect the original. And the original does not mean to become a chauvinist Indian. Not a xenophobic Indian कि साहब मैं ही हूँ. It means a basic knowledge of your culture, of what it means, of what were its many dimensions, of what were its many expressions, of the antiquity, the continuity, the assimilation, the diversity, and the peaks of refinement that India has. For instance, I'll give you an example because I'm doing all this to answer your question. 600 years before the birth of Christ, what was called BC, now it's called Common Era, Bharat wrote Natya Shastra. The Natya Shastra is 6,000 Sanskrit shloks, which is not a compendium of the arts. It is far more a meditation on what constitutes the right aesthetics. Rasa. The Western conceit, West में समझा जाता था कि the word aesthetics itself was born in the 17th century when someone wrote a critical appreciation of an art exhibition. उनको नहीं मालूम कि उसके 5,000 साल पहले भरत ने नाट्य शास्त्र 6,000 संस्कृत श्लोक लिखे थे. जो कि हमारी विरासत है। कौटिल्य का अर्थशास्त्र, शायद आप लोग को मालूम नहीं, perhaps you all don't know that it was lost to us. Not a single copy existed until in the 19th century, a copy was discovered by chance in a library in Kerala. And then people realized that 2500 years before Machiavelli, जिसको हम समझते हैं कि वो ही था रियल पॉलिटिक का ऑथर, एक सज्जन थे चाणक्य या कौटिल्य, जिन्होंने अर्थशास्त्र लिखी थी, जो कि हर एस्पेक्ट ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स, बल्कि रियल पॉलिटिक को डिफाइन करने वाली। तो हम तब से एक सोच की दुनिया में है, जब और जगह दुनिया में लोग पेड़ों से नीचे नहीं आए थे। तो इसका ज्ञान होना, टू हैव नॉलेज ऑफ योर ओन। सो व्हाट आई हैव ट्राइड टू डू, पास मी द बुक सुनीत, what I have tried to do in Echoes of Eternity is to try to give you a little sense of this remarkable canvas of thought. Starting, of course, from the Rig Veda, but ending, if I'm not mistaken, with Abdul Kalam.
Yeah.
And it traverses a journey which will show you the remarkable number of aspects जिस पर लिखा नहीं है। देखिए, लिखना, तबसरा करना एक चीज है, मौलिक सोच दूसरी चीज है, ओरिजिनल थिंकिंग। इंडिया में क्या हो गया ना कि वी बिकम वेरी गुड कॉग्स, नट बोल्ट किसी और की मशीन में, बट वी वर द मशीन इटसेल्फ। इसको समझना जरूरी है। These are writers who created the machine. They were not cogs in somebody else's wheel. तो इसलिए मैंने प्रयास किया, एक माला मिल गया तो खैर। तो अब इसमें सुनीत जी बता रहे थे, तमाम जो शुरुआती है, बुद्धिज्म, remarkable religion. 4 great religions were born on this soil. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. आप लोग को इसका अंदाजा नहीं है। और इस्लाम के भी आज इतने एडहेरेंट्स हैं, उसमें जो तब्दीलियां हुई, जो सूफी थॉट निकला, जो मिस्टिक थॉट निकला, वो सब इस मिली जुली गंगा जमुनी विरासत का हिस्सा है, जिसके बारे में कुछ तो ज्ञान होना जरूरी है। और मेरी किताब ग्रेट हिंदू सिविलाइजेशन, सुनीत, माय बुक ग्रेट हिंदू सिविलाइजेशन व्हिच केम आउट बिफोर दिस, ऑल्सो वी से गर्व से कहो हम हिंदू हैं, पर कई दफा मैं कहता हूं जिनसे ये कहते हैं, जो कि ये कहते हैं कि आप 2 पेजेस मुझे बताइए हिंदू थॉट का क्या है, और अगर नहीं बताएंगे तो आपको जेल होगी या मुझे जेल होगी, बंद करिए कमरे में। इट वॉज अ ग्रेट सिविलाइजेशन फॉर 7,000 years. I mean, until Islam came, and after that, through the Bhakti movement, it continued. 600 years of the Bhakti movement. It's one of the greatest, most original periods of history in any civilization in the world. Namdev, Tukaram, Chandidas, Vidyapati, Basavanna, Allama Prabhu, Mirabai. They were across India in local languages, the most ethereal poetry, which was the Bhakti movement which made Hinduism survive. Are you aware of it? So that is why I took this format of putting together some windows, खिड़कियां, और उस पर मुझे एक शेर याद आ रहा है, हम ही को ज़ौक़े नजारा नहीं रहा वरना अगर हम हमारे अंदर ही शौक नहीं है जानने का, हम ही को ज़ौक़ नजारा नहीं रहा, वरना इशारे आज भी करती हैं खिड़कियां मुझसे। तो भाई ये खिड़कियां तो है ना, इसमें झांकिए, देखिए, शायद नजारा पसंद आए और पढ़िए, पर खिड़कियां ही बंद होंगी तो क्या करेंगे?
Which brings me to the very difficult work that you would have had to do to compile this, because where you can, you have selected translations of the original texts as available to us. But there are large swathes where it was so vast, the area was so vast, that you had to resort to a kind of survey of the literature in that particular field, perhaps. For instance, for the Bhakti movement, where you've covered about 40 poets in about 20 pages. So, how did this process go about? Where do you select original text? Where do you do a survey? And also, the other question which is related to this, because it's important, is which translations to use, because sometimes the translations to me seem to a little archaic and perhaps not really conveying the sense that a modern thoughtful translation could have done. So just on these problems of compiling this particular wonderful compendium.
So Sunit, let me be clear. It was not an easy task, because the कैनवस इज सो बिग कि उसमें से कौन सा नगीना चुन के आप डालिए, which one do you select becomes a problem. Who do you select? Who do you exclude? Which translation do you take? And I tried to choose those translations. One is a quality matter, one is a technical matter. Let me share it with you. Quality was fidelity to the text, यानी जो अनुवाद, जो उसका तर्जुमा था, वो उस क्वालिटी का होना चाहिए कि उस पर्टिकुलर जो सिलेक्शन है उसके एसेंस को ले आए, एंड उसमें भी बड़ी चॉइस थी. सेकेंडली, आई found, and it's a coincidence, that some of the first translations, many of them done by Englishmen, by the way, were of a very high quality, and they also avoided the problem of copyright. So I have taken selections more recently and obtained permission, but there was no need for permission. They were lying unread, basically. Sometimes even the copy of the book was not available. I had to track it down. So I have chosen those. Now you ask me a question, why do I sometimes use a chapter to describe a period rather than take selections of each of the poets? क्योंकि कभी कभी एक सेंस कन्वे करना कि भक्ति मूवमेंट क्या था भाई, कैसे शुरू हुआ, उसके कौन कौन किरदार थे, who were its pillars, उसका सेंस देना by quoting a few lines of their poetry is far more important than having 2 volumes of this book. आपने कबीर पढ़ा तो आप वैसे भी पढ़ते हैं, इसमें पढ़ा, उसका संदर्भ समझा. आपने गुरु नानक पढ़ा, व्हाट अ ग्रेट रिलीजन, एक नूर से सब जग उपजा. यहां पटना साहिब तो पास ही में है. So the idea was to sum it up, because otherwise, let me tell you, ये एक वॉल्यूम नहीं, I would require 6 volumes, और वो भी किसी लाइब्रेरी में अनपढ़ी रह जाती. So for the sake of brevity and for the sake of fulfilling my primary purpose of bringing under 2 covers as much of this remarkable and vast heritage as possible to a curious reader, I chose that format. Then, your last part of your question, I admit I stand guilty in the introduction by saying कि भाई मुझ पर ये तो जरूर आरोप लगेगा कि आपने इनको क्यों चुना, इनको क्यों छोड़ा. Because एक चीज और मैं कहना चाहता हूं, I just want to say, Sunit, we are not aware of the richness of our philosophical, intellectual and linguistic heritage. पूरे sub-Saharan Africa में there is one language which had a script. Here is a country with 24 languages with scripts, developed grammar and a corpus of their own literature. And we somehow, हमारे मानसिकता में एक हीनता है अपनी भाषा बोलने. आपसे कोई सवाल पूछे हिंदी में तो आप जवाब दे देंगे कुछ टूटी फूटी अंग्रेजी में, कि आप ये ना समझिए कि मुझे अंग्रेजी नहीं आती. But this is a country with, I mean, if I have to choose from Tamil literature, what do I choose? Telugu, Malayalam, Bengali. So इसलिए it was a difficult task. I included what I could not. And you see, I have nothing against English, by the way. अब बात भी यहाँ ज़्यादातर अंग्रेजी में हो रही है, किताब भी अंग्रेजी में है, मतलब जो उसके तर्जुमा अनुवाद है. बट एक बारी अटल जी ने कहा था, अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी ने, कि ये मिथ्या है. इट्स अ मिथ दैट द ब्रिटिश लेफ्ट एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ द फ्रीडम मूवमेंट. They left because they could not bear anymore the massacre of the English language. वो चले गए, इतना अत्याचार हो चुका था. तो अपनी भाषा गर्व से बोलो भाई, अंग्रेजी भी जानो.
Absolutely. So, since you've already touched upon the subject and our time is coming to an end, two questions. One is, which are the omissions you regret the most? And which are the inclusions which people may have found a little unusual? For instance, there has been some comment on your including Osho also in this, in the thoughts. And the other comment has been that because you are such a literary figure yourself and fond of literature, there is perhaps an overabundance of poetry and poems, and that compared to thought or philosophical thought. So, just these, if you could address these before we draw this particular session to an end, and then I think Dr. Muhammad will also be joining, and there'll be another session in continuity with you.
No, Sunit, let me say, poetry, some of its inclusion, and one of my regrets is that I could not include more. So it is a regret. Poetry is compressed thought. न था कुछ तो खुदा था, कुछ न होता तो खुदा होता, डुबो या मुझको होने में, डुबो या मुझको होने ने, न मैं होता तो क्या होता. अब ये गालिब है एक दो लाइंस में to provide to you the essence of Vedanta. Aham, ego, I am, the biggest illusion. The sense of transience. What Buddha said, you don't step into the same river twice. सब नश्वर है. वो सब कुछ इन दो लाइंस में आ गया, तो मैं कैसे ना उसको करूं? Because it illustrates thought. दूसरी चीज, I wish I could have given more time to some of the Bhakti period poets, because when you read them, they are so remarkable, so remarkable. I could have written a book on Kabir by himself, on Nanak, the Japji, on the great Lingayat movement of Bangalore, Allama Prabhu and Basavanna, the women poets. भाई अंटाल थी, मीराबाई थी, इनके नाम सुने, remarkable women. So that is one regret. Now, I've also included Savarkar. उसका कारण है कि I have to be objective. He has influenced, he is a part of our heritage. But I have included that aspect of Savarkar which you are also not fully aware of. People remember Savarkar or claim his legacy because of a carelessly written 3-page tract on Hindutva, which he later himself diluted. He was still in Ratnagiri in house arrest after 11 and a half years of Kala Pani. सावरकर वॉज अ ग्रेट रेवोल्यूशनरी फाइटर. तो उन्होंने उस वक्त एक पर्टिकुलर कॉन्टेक्स्ट और संदर्भ में वो 3-4 पन्ने लिखे. बट सावरकर ने जो सबसे ज्यादा लिखा है, एंड आई पुट हिम एट पार देयर विद महात्मा गांधी, रिफॉर्म इन हिंदुइज्म. He was a crusader. He talked of 7 fetters, 7 बेड़ियां. स्पर्श बंदी, बेटी बंदी, वो जो 7 मैंने मेंशन की हैं, they are so important. And he was so much a proponent of making Hinduism free of its superstition, prejudice and discrimination and oppression. इस एस्पेक्ट को कोई नहीं याद करता आज. तो I have included that.
And Osho?
And Osho, because it is, now देखिए, this is where the subjective aspect of the author stroke editor comes in. In my view, there have been many philosophers more recently, but 2 names were particularly those that I thought stood out. One was Jiddu Krishnamurti. I have great respect for his thinking. He was an iconoclast who had the courage to tread his own path in the search for truth. And one, without doubt, was Osho, because you have to read Osho's writings to understand that he was not what is made out to be in the ashram in Pune. That was a very minor aspect of the corpus of his thinking. So that's why, if you want, you can substitute them.
No.
But read them also.
I was just referring to
Huh? Lal Ded to included hai bhai, because in the Bhakti chapter, Lal Ded is there. Mirabai is there, Antal is there, Allama Prabhu is there.
It's just that there are 40 people covered there, so people sometimes tend to forget that they are.
Because I can do a separate volume only on the 600 periods of the Bhakti movement, which has no parallel anywhere in the world in terms of literary output or consistently of such high quality. है ही नहीं.
So I
और
think
हम जानते नहीं.
by and large, Pavan, I think everybody would acknowledge that this is a tremendous labor of love that you have undertaken, very erudite labor, which is of benefit to all of us, because now we have in one volume a huge compendium of 7,000 years of thought in 7,500 saal ki. And it's something that all of us can dip into from time to time. You can refer to it. I think it's a great service you have done to our Indian thought.
Especially to the young people.
Yeah.
आज आप एक प्लेज लीजिए, हम फोटोकॉपी नहीं बने, ये मिमिक्री नहीं चलेगी. We are a great civilization. Before we were a nation, we were a civilization and recognized as such. And I want the young people to take the trouble, if they can, to buy this book, because don't read it from page 1 to whatever, 800 pages. Page by page. Dip into it, select, see what you like, but come to know कि आखिरकार ये मौलिक विरासत है तो क्या है. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pavan. Thank you for this session on the book.